Everyone, what is going on? What is going on? Welcome to That Man Show. My name is Curtis Brooks. I am your host and executive coach. I help high achieving men master the art of integrated leadership and authentic masculine presence. Guys, we got a great show for you this evening. Great conversation. Give me a second here before we get started here. I got a few things going on here, so let me get this started here over on LinkedIn. And we've got Joel. Thank you for joining, Joel, over on LinkedIn. Appreciate you. And we've got Substack going. So I am your host. My name is Curtis Brooks. We've got a great conversation for you. We're talking about projection is not protection, overcoming the false sense of security. And that I believe that false sense of security, I believe it affects all of us. So before we get started into the conversation, I got a few things I want to share with you. We are streaming to several platforms that are on the screen. Our primary home base is going to be LinkedIn at Curtis Brooks, also on Substack, and we're sharing this also over on YouTube at Men's Life Coaching on YouTube. So you can check out either one of those platforms. And last but not least, before we get the conversation going, we've got a wonderful challenge for about 50 men. And we're capping it at 50 men, guys, because as you can imagine, the larger the crowd gets, the more the information kind of gets weak. And we want to make this more kind of an intimate setting, if you will. So 50 people is our number. And it's called United Impact Challenge. So visit the link there on the screen there for more information about this challenge. Again, that's United Impact Challenge, bit.ly/United Impact Challenge. That will get you to the website for more information about that challenge. So become a part of it. Be part of that challenge, and it's definitely going to give you the information you need to take you to the next level as it relates to this integrated leadership that we've been discussing here. So that being said, guys, we got a great conversation for you. Once more, projection is not protection. That piece right there is a lot. And even as I get the show started here, I put a lot into this, guys. I put a lot into these conversations because, or at least the titles too, because each conversation that I'm sharing with you is in fact a part of me. It's not something I'm just pulling out the hat or pulling out of thin air. I like to be able to interject myself in these stories as well. So that being said, if you have ever suffered abuse on any level, or perhaps you have been the abuser, okay? And just FYI, the abuser in most cases is not out of the water because the abuser in most cases has also been abused. A lot of us often think that, the abuser, this person, man or woman, because abuse comes in both genders, both sexes. So abuse comes in obviously different forms as well. But the abuse that we may be dealing with at times, to know that the abuser has also been abused. And obviously the person that's going through that is going through those unfortunate situations. But each person, hey, Dr. Tawana, hey, how you doing over there on LinkedIn? Long time no see, sister. But yeah, so notice that or recognize that the abuser and the person being abused, the abused, it can be difficult seeing that they're one and the same, but in fact, they are one and the same. Because the person that's been abused has been abused, and the person that's going through it is going through it. But here's the bigger picture. Oftentimes when we have gone through different kinds of abuse, it could be physical, mental, emotional abuse, dealing with a narcissist or something of that sort, or perhaps you're the narcissist, but nevertheless, each person has suffered some kind of abuse, some kind of emotional longing, something that has been neglected on some level, okay? Now, because oftentimes that is the case, you are going to get people who, what we often call projecting in regards to how they're unable to deal with their feelings, their emotions. So I do want to read a quick definition of the word projection really quick here. So make sure that we're on the same page here. All right. The word projection, it says a psychological projection is a defense mechanism in which a person unconsciously attributes their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or motives to someone else. All right. Projecting, like as in you're projecting something onto the screen, on a screen or something, but obviously you're projecting those feelings and things onto a person rather than confronting an uncomfortable internal reality. This is a person that's having these feelings. Okay. Again, it can be the abused or the abuser. All right. They're one and the same. So it says, rather than confronting an uncomfortable internal reality, fear, inadequacy, arrogance, or unresolved insecurity, the projecting individual externalizes it, assigning it to others as though if it belongs to them. Now, that is powerful in itself. And I think that every last one of us as an adult or child has, in fact, dealt with that. If you've dealt with any kind of abuse, and it doesn't have to be abuse, it doesn't have to be something that's horrible that's happened to you. It could be sometimes that we didn't get what we wanted. It can be for the fact that life did not show up the way that I wanted it to. I didn't expect these different things to take place in life. So it can be just disappointment. And obviously disappointment can affect us emotional. And sometimes we can feel like life has just abused us. It's just kind of just taking us through. Life is not always easy, guys. Let's just face it. Let's just look at that reality alone. But so here's what happens with the person, the leader that often projects. The leader, as often as you hear me talk about leadership, we know the leader is not always just a person who's running an organization, right? The leader can be a mother. The leader can be a father. Even if there's no organization to lead, we take on the leadership role at home in each of our respective homes. So whether it be at home or in your organization, projection happens. And here's why it happens. Because as people, we often like to cover up. We like to cover up. We like to protect ourselves. But in the title in itself, it says projection is not protection. And that's oftentimes as we have been abused, or even for the abuser. And I'm saying that because we don't want to let anyone off the hook, because it can be difficult understanding that the abuser has also been abused. That's why he or she does it. The abuse does not necessarily mean that they're raging throughout their home or their business or organization. It can be just in way of their language, their aggressive language. But this projection often comes from the illusion that the person gives off, the leader gives off. He or she gives off this illusion that, hey, if I project my feelings onto this person, I give the feeling that it's, as I read to you in the definition, it's them, not me. It's like the person or a magician hiding their hand or playing some kind of card trick, and you're having to try to guess where the card is or where the missing card is or what the what the trick is or how did he or she do the trick. That's what the projection is. It's an illusion that gives the person who is on the other end of that, where they're blaming you or I for it. The illusion is that, hey, it's not me, it's you. You have the problem. It's not me, it's you. Maybe you're having a bad day. And it can also be known, perhaps even just gaslighting. I recently had to look up that term, gaslighting. It was been not so recent, but it's been maybe more than a year ago now. So I wasn't familiar with that term. So I had to do my own research in regards to that gaslighting. Uh, Passive leaders, passive parents, passive father, passive husband, projection, a passive mother, a passive wife, projection. My 2-year-old daughter at times will start crying, and I could probably say a whole lot of different things, but my job is to help her to express herself, not make her, but just help her to express herself. And I've had to come to a place where it's like, and say to my baby girl is that, Bella, daddy needs you to talk. Tell me what's going on. Like, can you share with me? And just talk to her in that way. And obviously, you know what? We're not talking about babies here, but in this example, I just want to share with you that the behavior oftentimes is the same thing, even in adults, where we can find ourselves having to come down to a level almost like a child to get the adult to talk, to say what's on their mind, what they're feeling. And so here are the several ways where this behavior of projection, how it affects leadership. It affects organizations. So in the way of team trust, team trust is impacted. Okay. It says how projection manifests. The leader attributes personal failings to team members. Okay. Remember, I just read you the definition in regards to the leader or the individual who is the projector, I guess, the one who is doing the projecting. They are challenged with taking on the responsibility, the personal responsibility. I'll put it that way. And rather than them taking personal responsibility for what they're feeling, they are placing it on their team members or individual team members. Have you ever been in a place where, or even in a relationship where you were feeling a certain way, and you weren't able to explain it, but you just needed a hug? And rather than say that, you shrugged it off, or you made an issue that wasn't an issue, but you just needed the person to come close to you. You just needed a hug. You just need some attention. But yet we can find ourselves, we can find ourselves choosing other words to describe the situation. And in fact, we can find ourselves not speaking true to the very needs of what we're dealing with. And this is what oftentimes the person who is in this space of projection, especially with leaders, they're not capable, but through a series of events that they have just a pattern that has been created over and over, they can find themselves continuously digging a hole, and that hole gets deeper. I can remember as a kid coming from Chicago, being born, raised in Chicago, where is that when it was snowing heavy, the blizzards, and it's been years ago now, but nevertheless, when it was snowing real heavy in Chicago, the cars would obviously get stuck at times in the snow, and you had to. There was a science to getting out of the snow, but for those who are not familiar with it, what they would commonly do is give it more gas, and they assume that the more gas you gave it, eventually it would pull itself out. You could pull yourself out of that rut, so to speak. But that's not how it worked. You had to approach it by giving it a little gas, and especially if you had help, you give it a little gas, and you're rocking the car back and forth, and eventually, as you're giving it the gas, you've got someone to help you push. And so, this is oftentimes what happens with the person who is projecting. He doesn't know how to get out of the situation because he's creating a pattern over it and over. He's pressed on the gas when in fact he didn't need to press on the gas, but he needed to pause for a moment. I've spoken about that pause quite a few times in the last couple of shows. But in fact, he needed to pause. And in some cases, maybe needed some help with a rocking motion to get out of the situation. But unfortunately, a lot of times for the person who is doing the projecting, they've created such a pattern of habits, if you will. And it can be very difficult for them to get out of this situation. And as a consequence or consequences is that it affects the team trust. There's an erosion of their psychological safety. The team withholds honest feedback. And here's the interesting thing about this, just projecting. It's hard to find help because people are, as people are automatically going to disengage because they're like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? What the heck is wrong with her? They're automatically going to disengage. And in fact, once they disengage, you have lost any kind of feedback that you could gather from that. And ideally, and when the leader is in a place where he or she is projecting, it can be absolutely difficult for us who are on the other end of it to give any kind of feedback, because at that point they're absolutely probably not in a space of wanting to hear that feedback. Another area of this projecting is decision making. Our decision making is absolutely going to be affected as we are in a place where we're projecting. Because, again, as I stated earlier, we are feeding ourselves the illusion, creating an illusion because we in fact have deceived ourselves. Because if we've deceived ourselves, absolutely, as we are looking at the situation, we're not seeing it as it is. As the situation presents itself, we're seeing the situation out of a leader who has been hurt, a leader who has been disappointed. And so naturally, the result is it affects the leader's decision making. And when it affects the leader's decision making, the leader finds himself in a place where he can become volatile. Because let's face it now. Let's face it. when this place right here is, the brain, and, we're not able to think rational for whatever reason, when it comes to that place, we can, as the title suggests, we can project some things onto others. But as we're doing that, we're not, in most cases, we're not in our right mind. In most cases, we're disshuffled, and we are causing others to be disshuffled. So even in this decision making, as far as us as leaders, especially when we're making this making our decision from a place of where we're projecting, having issues with accepting, taking personal responsibility for what our feelings are saying to us. And in most cases, these feelings are, as they're coming up, they're ideally unresolved issues. So in that, oftentimes the leader dismisses, I'm looking at my notes here when I'm looking to the right here. Oftentimes the leaders is dismissing alternative viewpoints as threats. Now, this is a common thing with people who are projecting, who are leaders who are in a space of who are projecting. And before I get into that there, I'm going to say this here. I talk a lot about leadership. I love leadership because I think the more and more we can dismantle the mystery behind leadership, you find out that there is no mystery, but there is a personal responsibility that we all have. And so as I talk more and more about leadership, I'm finding that this personal responsibility is greater than I once perceived. It's more than just me as a man coming home to from work, making sure that the doors are locked, and making sure that the family is taken care of. It's more than that. It is being able to be emotionally stable. It's being able to take personal responsibility for what I'm feeling or not feeling, for what I'm hearing or not hearing, for what I'm watching across the internet or not watching. It's taking personal responsibility for all those different things, and not to mention other things as well. How I talk to my daughter, how I deal with my own disappointments, how I communicate with my wife, how I hear her. That has not always been my best place sometimes, because there are things that I'm dealing with as well sometimes. And so there are times when my wife might say something where I'm hearing her, but I'm hearing her from a space where I was once wounded. But outwardly, it doesn't come up right away until we have the conversation. So I can find myself going back and forth over a conversation. She's exhausted, I'm exhausted, but only to find out, in most cases, I had to pause and be prepared to dissect, sit there with her, because at times I wasn't always able to sit there because I would get so frustrated. Now, I'm using myself as an example in a vulnerable moment, and that's okay. But you'll see as we continue on in this conversation about projection, is that that's what it's going to take to come to a sense of reality. Your own sense of reality. And it's not to say that people don't project. Disappointments happen in life. It doesn't mean that a person has suffered abuse on different levels, but that's just one of the key areas where projection can come from. It can also come from disappointment, as I mentioned earlier. extreme dissatisfaction. So keep that in mind. So I mentioned decision making being an area of impact. As a leader is dealing with his team, his decision making is off. When an individual tries to help in a certain area, especially perhaps in an area where the leader is not hearing, he's hearing something completely different, or he or she, the leader, is hearing something that sounds like a threat to them, the leader will often dismiss the other person and find them not so much as what they said as a threat, but find them as a threat as well. Okay? The leader who is projecting, he's often dealing with blind spots, poor risk assessment, missed opportunities. Missed opportunities in the sense of taking a pause. Guys, that pause, you'll hear me mention that pause several times from now on, because that pause is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. And so the leader who is projecting, he is missing the opportunity to pause, to be able to hear what is being said, to be able to visualize what is being said, so that he's not looking at that particular situation from a space of that wounded leader. I talked about that wounded leader, I think last week, I can't remember, but the leader is not looking from a wounded space. And so he's able to see with clarity, and he doesn't miss those opportunities. He's not only able to see with clarity, but he's able to hear with clarity. Even if he has to humble himself and say, hey, can you explain that to me again? Can you say that to me? Can you say that a little slower? So that he's active listening. He's making himself available to the very moment, being present in the moment, and he can hear what he needs to hear. And then he can make a decision from that place. But if he is in a space, that leader is in a space where he is projecting, again, coming from that wounded place, and he is dealing with that area, whatever that area may be. For many of us, it can be a lot of different things. It could be abandonment. It could be rejection. It could be self-image. It can be a host of different things. That is absolutely not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination. It could be just our own perception of how we believe others are viewing us. How we, again, as I mentioned, that self-image. And from how we see ourselves and how we are communicating with people, it's very telling. Even when, as a leader, when we can find ourselves being very negative as leaders, it says a lot about us. Even if it's a situation where it may not even necessarily be about work, it could be something that had taken place at home, and we respond in a certain way to our team members or to other leaders within the organization. What does it say about us? It speaks to our image. It speaks to how we see ourselves. So eventually, the leader has to be emotionally grounded. We'll get more into that in just a little bit there. But the leader does, in fact, have to be emotionally grounded. And And that's what I work with men on, being emotionally grounded. But nevertheless, the other area of impact is culture, right? Uh, Culture. It can be it can be race. It can be a lot of different things, guys. Uh, leaders in their areas of projection, leaders can blame other members, and again, not taking accountability. Culture is a big part of that. In regards to us at times not taking accountability, and as it relates to being able to manage those inadequacies, those areas where we're uncomfortable, right? A cultural fear, a cultural of fear, defensiveness, and low ownership. You know, for that space of culture, it is a powerful place. It's a powerful word, because the reality of it is that culture, it does not have to affect everything, but it's through the eyes that we, a lot of us, not all of us, but it's through the eyes that the world views leadership. A lot of times, leadership, ownership. So even as a leader, the projection can sometimes come from your team members as well. But as a leader, we also have to be responsible on how we handle that projection. Because as a leader, if we are in a place of feeling defensive about our own culture, about who we are as a leader, rest assured, those that place of being uncomfortable is absolutely going to show up where we're projecting that onto our team members, or projecting that within the organization, or just from our day-to-day lives, not only in the space of the organization, but in the space of our personal area, personal place, our home. And so it's very telling, because in most cases, it means that this is a conversation that you're often having at home. And so naturally, we'll bring that conversation, those emotions, those feelings into the workplace. And I'm not saying in some cases it's not warranted, but know, as leaders, regardless of your background, ethnicity, just your culture overall, we have to take personal responsibility for leadership. A lot of times, other people may not understand it from the personal responsibility. A lot of us don't understand leadership as a personal responsibility. And I believe that this is why a lot of times we can find ourselves blaming other people for how they made me feel. They said XYZ and it made me feel a certain way. And so I responded this way because they made me feel a certain way. So we can find ourselves blaming the other person, but in reality, we have to be more in charge of our own emotions. Because let's face it, people will absolutely say some mean things. People will say some mean things in this life. But we have to be prepared to not be so quick to discharge. Because the reality of it is that every last one of us are going through something, to include leaders, to include people who are accepting the responsibility of themselves, seeing themselves as leaders. This is the reality that we have to face, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you're not taking ownership of your own emotions, someone else is. If you're not taking ownership of the decisions that you and I might need to make on a day-to-day life, on a day-to-day situation, someone else is. And typically what happens is that when we are not making the necessary decisions in our own respective lives, according to, again, a host of different things, when we're not making those necessary decisions in our respective lives, it can feel like we've been pushed back, and we've been pushed back. And when it's time to, or when we finally come to, and being prepared to look at the thing or look at the situation for what it is and seeing it for what it is, come to some sense of reality where we're actually asking questions now. Up to that point, we've been driven so far back. And it can possibly feel like, where have I been? Where have I been in this process? I've been MIA in this process. I haven't shown up for the process. And yet all along, for the entire time that you and I have not showed up for the process, where your decision was absolutely crucial, your life wants to know what you think about it. Your life needs your input. And without our input in this life, others will absolutely make the decisions for us, to the point where we were pushed back up in the corner. And now, as a result, we come off with this projection, or we're going through life from a passive space, almost like, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anyways. But the reality is that you have always mattered. And when we stop making decisions in our individual and respective lives, we can absolutely be made to feel like we're invisible. Because we stop participating in our own lives, actively participating, being present in the moment, that kind of participating. Not the here, I'm here. No, actively, gainfully participating in our own respective lives. So at some point, it is live. We are live, Gabe. Thank you for joining over on LinkedIn. So at some point, we as people have to be prepared to look at a reality. We have to be prepared to look at a reality. Be prepared to dismiss the need to be entertained all the time. If we're not entertained all the time, we're bored. I'm bored. Life has no meaning. I'm bored. We have to be prepared to dismiss that and get into the nooks and crannies of life, because believe it or not, you and I are absolutely needed. Because if we're not showing up, someone else is showing up. They're running the show for you. And so naturally, what we're left to do is to get upset because we haven't taken charge of our own lives. Because we have been operating on a routine, operating on a pattern, and we don't know how to get out of the pattern. It takes someone like myself and the other millions of other coaches out there to help us to look at the thing from a different perspective so that we can stop spinning the wheels. Stop believing the negativity or the negative messages that we're telling ourselves. And to know that we are not invisible. But the less we speak up concerning our own feelings, concerning our own situations, concerning that rejection, concerning that abandonment, concerning that jealousy, concerning that envy, concerning that pride, concerning that ego, the less we speak up, the more you're controlled by the very thing, that entanglement, if I could say that, the more you are controlled by it. And from a spiritual space, it's pulling you away. It's pulling you away to a place where it's making you and I feel isolated. It's pulling us away from the very source of our being. It's pulling you away from, and I think what's the word I think I spoke on this last week. It's betraying you. Your emotions, your feelings are betraying you and I. I think the definition of the word betray was to seduce and desert. So basically to pull you out into a space that you know you're right. You believe that you're right. You have every right to defend yourself. But in the meantime, you've destroyed the trust with your team as a leader. In the meantime, your team feels disjointed. They can't trust you. Loss of creativity, loss of real connection. And in most cases, loss of some very good feedback, advice that you could receive from your teammate, your team members as a leader. So it's absolutely important, ladies and gentlemen, that we get this thing together in regards to projecting. Get in touch with our feelings. Get in touch with those emotions. Get in touch with those desires. And, if it didn't happen today, hey, how can I make it happen? How can I get to this space, or how can I get to that place? So the last thing we talked about was culture being an impact of this projection. And that's a powerful piece there because, again, whether it be the leader who's looking at things from the lens of culture, or our team members looking from things of culture, or the society as a whole looking at things from a perspective of culture, we have to keep in mind as leaders, it is absolutely our responsibility on how we need to respond. We know this culture thing is a monster. This culture thing is a monster, and it can be taken in a lot of different areas. But when you are a leader and you keep allowing people, or you keep allowing yourself, and I know as a man of color, absolutely the culture thing is alive and well out there. But as a leader, it's my responsibility on how I'm going to respond. It may not change how they feel, but I cannot, as a leader, give my team members, even if my team members respond from a way that they're projecting, I cannot give them that ammo. I cannot give them that ammo. So whether it's culture, whether it's some other issue you as a leader are dealing with, when we find ourselves responding out of our own circumstances, unresolved issues, we're feeding that monster. Not only the monster that's in us, the monster of unresolved issues that we may be dealing with, we're also triggering that monster in our team members. Because rest assured, our team members, in most cases, are dealing with the same thing, same emotions. Maybe not, obviously not the same situations, but they're having the same emotions in different areas. Every person on this earth has dealt with some kind of anger. Dealt with perhaps feeling inadequate on some level. So we've all had these different emotions. But as a leader, you and I are absolutely responsible for how we're absolutely responsible for how we sound off on this thing. Kenneth over here on LinkedIn says, says he feeds no monsters over here on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's a great attitude to have. Feeding no monsters. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great attitude to have. But the reality of it is that we do have a tendency to sometimes be dragged into a battle sometimes that's not ours. Either we are starting the battle, and I say battle meaning that projection that we maybe different feelings that we may have not resolved. Either we're starting the battle or someone's pulling it out of us. They may have responded to us in a certain way, or perhaps we think they should respond to us in a certain way and they don't. That's a big thing right there. That's a big thing right there. We can sometimes have an idea on how people should respond to us. And when they give us less than what we may have perceived and how they should respond to us, we can find ourselves getting ourselves kind of just, kind of in a space where we're now projecting our own feelings onto people because we didn't get what we wanted. Another area of impact for this projecting as leaders is innovation. It absolutely. I think a couple of shows ago, I talked about how when leaders are wounded, and I can't remember exactly how I said it, but when leaders are speaking or leading organizations or even their own families, respective families, from a space of being wounded, it absolutely stifles innovation. It stifles creativity. And I think during that conversation, I mentioned that leadership is a flow. There's a flow to it. There's a current to it. And whether it's coming from our team members or it's coming from the leaders, it's a flow. And when we as leaders can give our team members a destination to get to, we can charge them up and encourage them to pull on the creativity that's within them, that's within all of us. But when the leader begins to project from a space rather than creating a psychological safety for his team members, when a leader begins to speak from that space of projecting, he absolutely has the potential to cut off the flow of creativity, the flow of innovation, and as a result, it leads to the leader acting out of a space of being defensive, because in most cases he's cut off from that space. He's trying to draw on something that he can't access anymore. That space of creativity. It's hard to access that space when you're dealing with a host of different emotions. Creativity comes from a space of freedom. Absolutely. All right. Another area of impact is leader credibility. That's a big one there, because when leaders come from a space of, again, here we are, that wounded leader coming from a space of where he is projecting. When leaders come from that space, they absolutely will lose credibility with their team. And as a leader is coming from that space, he or she doesn't even feel credible anymore. And if they're honest with themselves, they not only lose credibility with their team members, but they don't feel credible within their own selves, because they've been drawn out on something. Hey, Coach Carey, checking in from Indiana. Thank you for joining here over on LinkedIn. Gabe over on Facebook. Thank you for joining, sir. See your comment. Hello to you over there on Facebook. And Substacks, they're still there. So again, I want to say hey to everyone. Guys, we've been going for a little bit now. We've been talking about projection is not protection, overcoming a false sense of security. Lastly, I talked about leader credibility, how when leaders come from that space of projection, it absolutely impacts their credibility. Okay. They also, the leader projects false certainty as he is coming from that space of projection. Okay. He is not only, appears to be certain with himself, but in fact, for those of us who are looking, are in the midst of this leader who has lost all credibility, he does not appear to be certain. And so that's something to consider as we are leading organizations, as we're leading our families. Okay. Another big thing in regards to the cost of this leader who is projecting, who has just lost credibility, is that I mentioned earlier, it is a loss of trust. It is a facade that eventually cracks. And commonly as leaders, we fathers, husbands, commonly as leaders, we as men will approach a situation, like we've got it all together. And when we're at times misreading the situation, it doesn't appear to be as we have perceived it to be, or we heard something different than what we may have initially thought we have heard, or we've been triggered on some level, uh, our response in most cases is not very fluid. It can be disjointed a lot of times because various reasons. Again, we've been triggered, or we know this route. We know what our spouse is going to say. We know what it should look like, but in fact, life chose a different route, or the spouse said something different than what we thought she was going to say. It can absolutely bring out things in us that we're just, in most cases, unfamiliar with. And so, as a result, this projection can absolutely look like protection. But we know it's not protection. It is a false sense of protection. It is an illusion. It is an illusion. It's us giving away our insecurity to someone else, and the likes of us not wanting to deal with it, not knowing how to deal with it. It's us feeling the weight of just life happening to us. It's us dealing with the facade that is now broken or just being revealed. It can absolutely have us in a place where we feel like we're running for cover. Okay. Uh, yeah, Coach Carey, I see your comment there. Oh, you're talking to Kenneth. I apologize. But yeah, so as leaders, again, we can find ourselves at times running for cover because we've been revealed. So the anatomy of the projected leader. I'm going to kind of run through this here, guys. We've been on an hour. Oh, wow. Time goes by so quick. The anatomy of the projected leader. All right. Understanding what drives projection in leaders requires honest examination of that insecurity. Now, I spoke of this earlier, and it's one of the things that as leaders that we're going to have to approach this from a space of I'm ready to find out who I am. And life happens to all of us. Let's just face it. Life has happened to all of us. In some cases, life has done a number on all of us, every last one of us. But at some point, it comes a time where we've got to be prepared to question some things. If you find yourself from one relationship to another relationship, yet to another relationship, and it can feel like the entire world is just, just no one knows what they're talking about. Everyone is this, and then you're just frustrated at the world. In most cases, that's probably pretty telling that you need to pause and be prepared to have an honest conversation with yourself. And oftentimes these are the conversations that get pushed away. These are the things that get rejected. Because very interesting now, the very thing that you are rejecting, it also rejects you. So if you are failing to deal with the very thing that's been troubling you, perhaps it's abandonment, perhaps it's rejection on some level. Again, this is definitely not an exhaustive list. There's a host of different things that that people are dealing with. But the point is that whatever you are refusing to deal with, it refuses to deal with you. So therefore, you cannot solve the problem. You can't fix it. And whatever you're not fixing, it in most cases will get worse and worse and worse, to the point where the very thing that you have decided to turn away from, that is the thing that ends up controlling you and I. The very thing that you and I decide to reject, it will also reject you. So in the case that if it's an abandonment issue, if it's a rejection issue, if it's jealousy, if it's envy, if it's, again, a host of different things that are out there, whatever it may be, if you and I as leaders have not dealt with it, here's the cycle that it takes. It will appear that it's not there because you pushed it away. It'll come up again in yet another relationship, and you'll push it away, and you'll perhaps in some cases project those feelings that are showing up because you and I have not dealt with that thing. So we push it away again, and it shows up yet again in another relationship. And not necessarily just a personal relationship, but even in the workspace, it shows up. And you push it back again, and it just keeps showing up. And so what happens now, it's showing up now with a vengeance now. Now you're having to fight this thing. And now inwardly you're fighting it, but it's also fighting you. And so here what happens, rather than you and I dealing with it, we end up projecting the fight, the internal fight that's taking place on the inside. We end up projecting that internal fight out to others. And so if you're still not ready to deal with it, you, in most cases, have hurt your spouse by what you've said, responded in a way where you're maybe hurt your team members, crushed them. They don't trust you anymore. They don't know when you're going to blow up. They don't know when you're going to become angry. So if you're still not finished, perhaps you lose your job. If you're still not finished, perhaps you go into a depression. So if you're getting a picture, that thing that you and I have chose not to deal with, it's getting bigger, it gets bigger, and it gets bigger to the point where it's not even manageable. It begins to manage us. So keep that in mind. The very thing that you reject also rejects you. And sometimes as people, we can have a tendency to say, hey, I don't need that. But in fact, it's something that you need to resolve. You may not need it, but it's coming up for a reason. And it's something that we need to resolve. We can all deal with or have dealt with this projection, whether you are been abused or perhaps you're the abuser. We've all dealt with it on some level. But the reality of it is that until we are prepared to manage that, bring those loose ends, so to speak, those emotions that seem to get away from us, we've got to be prepared to take those things captive, wrangle those things in, and bring them under the authority of an understanding that's greater than ourselves. We've got to be prepared to dismantle some things, because the protection that we once perceived through the eyes or through the lens of projection, that's not protection. Protection is a leader who creates psychological safety for not only their team members, but for their spouse, for their family. That the people around them feel safe. The people around him can trust him. He builds credibility. He is credible. He's a man or a leader of his word. Insecure leaders often achieve success because of their insecurities. Absolutely, absolutely. The drive to prove oneself, to earn approval, to be seen as capable, to be seen as capable. These motivations can fuel extraordinary performance in the early stages of a career. Here's what this means. Oftentimes, leaders who are insecure, they have projected this insecurity onto other people so often, and just throughout their career or their career through in the space of leadership, they have projected this loss, this space, or them feeling uncomfortable with dealing with their own stuff. They have projected this onto people for so long that people have becoming fearful of them. They're now in leadership. And so essentially, this is how they have muscled their way into certain leadership spaces, because they've created a fear. When in fact, it is the leader who is insecure. So it is important for us as leaders to examine our hearts as we are dealing with those areas of insecurity. I have also found myself as a father at times. I've had to pull back on some things, because we can perceive as fathers, as husbands, we can perceive dealing with leadership as from a certain perspective of just our own understanding. It can just be wrong. It's causing pain in my household. It's causing pain to my team members and within my organization. So as far as a leader who is now providing the real protection that comes from being grounded, that comes from emotional stability, the leader has to be reflective. The leader has to be prepared to be reflective, do some reflective work. And oftentimes that reflective work comes through that pause. Sometimes we just have to get by ourselves sometimes and pause. Maybe you can take a lunch without having people around you. Not scrolling through your phone, but just reflecting on the previous conversation, maybe before you taking your lunch. Reflecting on the climate, the atmosphere in your workspace. Reflecting on how you may have heard your team members say certain things and how it made you feel. So it is important to know that leaders have a responsibility. We have a much larger responsibility than I believe that was once perceived. It's not just leadership for ourselves, but it's leadership for the people who are under us, team members. It's leadership for our families. It's leadership for the organization. And in most cases, our team members are looking up to us. In most cases, our team members are looking up to us. And the interesting thing about leadership, oftentimes, especially coming from the right heart, the right space, if you will, is that even for other leaders, when we as leaders operate in a certain mindset, perspective, again, from that space of being emotionally stable, other leaders are obviously watching. And if you are a leader who has done the work, we know that the work in most cases never ends. It's something that we're always looking on the inside. We're always doing that reflective work. But we're also looking at other leaders and how they handle certain things, and knowing that we can also learn from other leaders. So it's not just your team members who are looking, but your team members who will become leaders as well. And it's other leaders who are looking to learn from us as leaders. So keep that in mind. So lastly, we're going to kind of run through this here. We're going to talk about overcoming the projection, the path to integrated leadership. That's often what I'm working with men as an integrated leadership and leader. I often work with men in this space. So we're going to talk about self-awareness. And you've heard me talk about this a few times, at least by now. Self-awareness is the first place that we start from, and I probably have mentioned this in a use some different wording, but nevertheless, being self-aware, that's that first space that we want to find ourselves as leaders. Again, being just honest with ourselves. Being honest with ourselves and saying, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm dealing with. And guys, in most cases, when you're having to peel back the layers on this onion and get down to the nuts and bolts of this of leadership, nuts and bolts of becoming who we are as part of the human race, who we are as men, that we have to be drastically honest with ourselves. And when we're not prepared to do that, we can find ourselves being drawn out by the illusion. Being drawn out by looking at that illusion yet from a different angle. Maybe it's going to give me something different today. Maybe it's going to show up. I'll approach it from a different angle. And all the while, the truth sits there waiting to be discovered. Because for most of us, our default is to go back to the thing that's elusive. The thing that we've been trying to figure out. We're trying to do it ourselves, because in most cases, that's what we know to do. We know how to try and do it ourselves. And we keep doing it, and we keep doing it, pressing those buttons, looking at it from different angles, and hoping to get something different results. The same thing and get different results. Doing the same thing. The term for that is what? Insanity. So we must be prepared to be drastically honest with ourselves, guys. To be prepared to peel back the layers of this massive onion. We must see vulnerability as strength. Vulnerability is not something that chickens do. It's something that we as humans, we as human beings have to be able to tackle. I think tackle is an appropriate word, because we have to tackle it, because I think naturally just being people and just what we are brought up in and how we see ourselves. The natural thing for us is to approach this thing standing up, with our back straight and our chest stuck out. When in fact, sometimes we just need to come down. We need just open and honest dialogue with ourselves. And to see that vulnerability not as judgment, but as strength. We have to be prepared to keep promises to ourselves. Okay? We have to be prepared to keep promises to ourselves. All too often, as we are dealing with that leader who is projecting and looking at his projection as protection from his own space, we can find ourselves deceiving ourselves. We can find ourselves deceiving ourselves. And I think when I say keeping your promise, because it's a commitment that you're going to have to make. You're going to have to schedule some time, whether you're connecting with myself or connecting with another coach, whatever the case might be. You're going to have to find some time to stick with this commitment. Because if not, in most cases, we can find ourselves being drawn out by that default program. That's why being intentional about keeping a commitment is hugely important, because the default system or default programming is waiting there, already activated, engines running, waiting to be acknowledged. That's the default programming. And so we have to be intentional about keeping those promises to ourselves as we are working out these different things. Lastly, we have to see progress over perfection. Hey, Michael, thank you for joining us over on LinkedIn. Appreciate you. Mike says Curtis locks are self-aware. Okay. He goes on to say Curtis has a very calming voice. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. So, lastly, we're talking about progress over perfection. Okay, as we are coming into this space of integrated leadership, not for the sake of just trying on something new, but as we're peeling back the layers, we're not judging ourselves. Because along the way, we have all picked up a bunch of stuff, man. We picked up a lot of stuff. Picked up a lot of stuff. And it's layers upon layers of stuff that we're all wearing, all dealing with to some degree. And some of us wear it well, and some of us don't wear it well. But nevertheless, as we're going through this process, we have to visualize ourselves making progress. And as we're making this progress, we have to see it's from a perspective that it's progress over perfectionism. Because that perfectionism is that space which, in most cases, the leader who has been projecting, that's where it comes from. When things aren't perfect, when things don't dress themselves up the way that we see them or how we have perceived them, for the leader who is dealing with that projection or dealing with the inadequacies of his character. For the leader who's dealing with those things, oftentimes he will project perfectionism. And when there's a crack in the armor, he can find himself trying to cover up. Again, there goes that projecting. Because what might appear to be a small crack to you and I, he is typically the leader. He is typically looking at it from a space where it's massive. He doesn't see that it's just a small situation where he could say, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't quite understand what you were saying. I was looking at it from this perspective. Can you explain that to me again? He's not looking at it from that perspective or from that angle. He's looking at it from a space where there's a huge crack for something that could have been in a space where he could have said, hey, I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. And the rest of the day could have gone on from there. He's not looking at it from that perspective. He sees a malfunction in his armor. And because he sees that malfunction in his armor, the leader, is quick to cover it up because he feels exposed. And feeling exposed feels uncomfortable to most of us. It feels like something has betrayed us. So for the leader, again, it's a major flaw for him. Because when he's not appearing to be perfect or showing up as perfectionism, he is trying to protect himself because he feels exposed. So that being said, guys, we've been on for about an hour and a half almost. Hopefully this conversation has been engaging for you, been impactful for you. Thank you, Gabe, for joining over on Facebook. I see you there. Thank you, Substack, those who are on Substack. Thank you, Sir Kenneth, over on LinkedIn. And thank you, Coach Carrie Willis. Thank you, Mike, for joining over on LinkedIn. Yeah, you guys are just having a great conversation over here, man. That's where I need to be in the comments for sure. But nevertheless, thank you all for being a part of this conversation. Hopefully this has made sense to you. And that if you are that leader who is in that space where you are dealing with this dealing with projection and seeing your projecting as protection, and not sure on how to deal with the flaws or dings in your armor, you need to reach out to me. I am an executive coach. I help high-achieving men master the art of integrated leadership and authentic masculine presence. So here's the link on the screen here, guys. bit.ly/integrated leadership. Check out the website there for more information. Reach out to me for a free consultation, guys. Absolutely no cost to you. And we'll talk about some things and see if we are a good fit for each other. So that being said, guys, I want to say thank you all once more for being a part of this great discussion. And also, I want to say really quick here, and I've been meaning to say this right before I sign off here. I want to thank all of you guys. You guys make this such an awesome broadcast, man. You really do. Thank all of you. You guys have been hanging out with me for a while, and yeah, and I do my best to try to support each of you as well. I know Gabe Kenneth as well. He's sending links for people to watch other people's live stream, and I'm not sure if Kenneth has done his own live stream yet, But nevertheless, Coach Carey as well. I'm here to support you as well. Thank you for your support. Mike, you know I'm here to support you as well. My brother Wayne, I don't see him tonight, but also here to support him as well. Sharito, I don't see her as well. But again, there's a lot of you who will show up on just every week. And I want to say thank you. Really, I mean that. And you guys have just absolutely made this show worth doing, and I look forward to doing it every week. So that being said, guys, I want to say thank you all for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, and we will talk with you later. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.